Like, is anyone else seeing themselves in this book, or you just feel like you're reading this is the question that I have. Does anyone else see yourself in Mr. Jones's experiences and his life and the way he kind of views life and kind of honestly stumbles and fumbles through life in his younger years? Does anyone else see yourself in that, or do you feel like you're reading his story? Because I think that's a really important part of nonfiction, of memoir writing too, right? Does reader see, do we see ourselves in this, or are we reading someone else's story? Both of them can be good, but I'm just wondering what y'all feel about this text.
This is Kagiso. The only thing I see is, especially I guess when I was younger, but even now, people not really knowing you, people just taking a part of you and thinking that that's you, you know.
Mm.
And so, like his gayness was the top thing, that people saw. And I guess his blackness also. But we're all made up of so many different elements, characteristics, and all like that. And, even his mother, didn't really see the total him. And maybe there's nobody who can see the total you,
Mm.
But it'd be nice if people saw more of you than just, one thing or what you present.
But also that is what he's presenting. I mean, he is presenting his queerness as almost a weapon to be used against, I think he says it, to be used against like queer norms that he is trying to fight against, that even within queerness, there is this predominance of white people or white men in his case, and he is trying to use his queer identity almost to like assault America.
Mm-hmm.
So like it feels like you want to present Saeed as an innocent, but he is, I wouldn't use the word guilty, but he is a willing participant in everything that happens to him, more so everything that he does to other people.
Mm.
So because he does seem to be quite the aggressor, or he seems to be quite the dominant man in these relationships. Again, if you put it in that, forgive my.
So Ryan, you feel like you're reading his story more.
Yeah, it is his story.
You don't really
He's
see.
not like a victim.
Right.
So far, anyway.
Except at the end, or not the very end, but like the end of with Daniel. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
I think I agree with what Ron says. I don't actually, I think I don't, not yet. Well, I've already read it, so I don't want to go too far ahead, but thus far, I don't see myself in the story. I do, when I'm reading, see him. Mm-hmm. I'm feeling like I'm reading Saeed's story. And like I said last week, with every chapter that I read, it goes deeper and deeper in my soul, because I think, wow, what an amazing, amazing vulnerability this man has in order to share all of this stuff. I don't know if it's just because maybe I need to read more memoirs, or I just feel like he's spectacular. I'm just amazed and humbled by how he humbles himself to share this stuff. I mean, I don't know, I think it's something serious to share your sexual orientation, your sexual preferences. I mean, even like just a general conversation, everyone's talking. It's like, oh yeah, you could joke around about this, about that, about men, about sex, but that's not, I mean, underlining, you kind of telling what you prefer, right? But not in this tone. I mean, and I also don't believe that he is innocent. I do feel like he has his own twig of guilt, of evil. He actually says it, you know, I am also evil. I don't really know what it is because I don't want to like ruin it, but
no, we're discussing those pages though, the pages you're referring to.
In one of the chapters, he says, like, I feel mean. It's mean, you know, like he'll
that was
say
earlier.
that.
Yeah.
I think it's chapter 15. I think
when he crashed the car with the guy and they got into the car crash.
like he'll right, like he'll say things, and honestly, even though he says, I feel mean, and I know that it's ill-intended, but I don't know. In my heart, I don't see him as mean. I just see him as, you're experiencing things, and we all have mean thoughts. That doesn't mean we're mean people, right? Like everybody has something that they're mean. And like Brandon, you give us these prompts, and this prompt, I mean, to be honest with you, it was a great prompt, but the first thing I thought was, wow, she's gearing this prompt towards this story. And guess what? I don't think I've ever done anything in my life as brave as writing a memoir like this. So I know that you didn't like kind of like mean it like, oh, what's your brave thing? I just kind of like geared it towards or compared it towards Saeed. And I was like, wow, this is by far so brave that I don't know if I could even top it. I mean, not that we're like comparing ourselves or trying to top each other out in this platform or even Saeed, just like, wow, I don't know if, you know, and then the other part.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what the prompt is for. Can you be braver than Saeed Jones?
Well, also the other thing that I was thinking is when you think of bravery, right? Like some people don't think of themselves as brave. Sometimes you do things and somebody else might see it as, wow, she's so brave, or wow, she did that. Wow, that's a great accomplishment. But the person themselves, we're so critical of ourselves that we don't see it as brave. We see it as, I could do better. I could see better. I could do this. I could do. So that's kind of what I got when I was thinking about the prompt, when I was thinking about Saeed, when I was reading the book. I was just like, wow, this is so amazing. But anyway, I'm sorry. I just wanted to share that. I just kind of feel like so emotionally attached to the book, you know? I think it's great.
I think that something that would be good for you to write is maybe not the last time you've been brave. Just hearing you talk would be the last time you let yourself be okay with being at 80, doing something not perfect. I think that would be the bravery for you. And I think that would be the crux and the honesty and the juice. I think just try it out, see what you think. Just form or something like that. I think that'd be a good story for you to write though. The last time you were really brave was the last time, you know, you allowed something not to be 100% and the effects of that. But so in that case, does anyone else want to add anything to that before I kind of start talking about the text, talking about the idea of if you, when reading this book, you felt like you were reading someone else's story, or if you actually kind of could see yourself and relate to the actual events, not maybe being in Texas in the early 2000s, but just the idea of the experiences that Saeed goes through. Were you just reading his story, or could you kind of see yourself in them?
I don't know. I mean, are we limiting ourselves by saying, can we just see Saeed's story? Because something you said in the beginning is that your memoir touches not just you, but everyone else. And so while I don't see myself in Saeed's, his personal journey, I could identify a little bit with his mom, about, right, his mom not, she wants to know, but she doesn't want to know. As a mom myself, I could see that. It's like, yeah, I want to know what's going on with your life, but I don't need to know who you screwed Saturday night. It's okay. So
Very
I saw,
interesting. Miss Linda, both of yours were really interesting. Both of the way you kind of see yourself in this text are really, really interesting to me.
so, and I have a daughter, so I especially don't want to know who you screwed Saturday night. Okay.
Or Sunday or Monday or
But
Tuesday.
right, but I want to know if you but I want to know if you were safe. Like when he finally tells his mother, and he says, I had an experience, and she says, were you safe? I could identify with that. It's like, okay, I don't want to know too much, but I want to know that you're being responsible.
Yes. Yes.
What if she shares more? What are you going to say?
There have been times when she has shared more. And one time in particular, we're driving, I'm driving, and so it was like, okay, eyes on the road, I'm just going to listen here. I try to determine whether or not she's just sharing to shock me, or whether or not she's sharing because she needs to talk, and act accordingly from there. But yeah, there have been those times.
Yeah, this is, we got what we asked for. We were talking about race a lot, and where was it? Where did we stop last week? At chapter 11 or 14? Did we read about the botanist this week or last week? I don't know, but it must have been this week. We read the botanist.
Yeah.
That, I was not ready for that.
Me neither.
I knew that, he was gonna have to bring race and sexuality into this story on a deeper level outside of middle school, but I was not ready for the collide, if you will, experiencing all of those kind of shocks at once: sexual shock, racial tension, and class. Class was a big thing for him, and a lot of these men that he would hook up with. It was a big class divide. Anybody else see that?
Yeah. The one thing I noticed is that Saeed is always going to these men's homes. They're never coming to his home, and the homes are usually, except for when he goes with the college student back to I guess it's a dorm kind of place, but the botanist, and there's someone else later on that they have homes, and they seem to be doing relatively well, which also makes me question Saeed's intent, his personal intent. And he does state he's out to sort of expose what it means to be straight. But he also seems almost, I don't want to use because I don't know his mental health, but he does seem to, his intent to be with white men seems above and beyond. I get this because I'm assuming, even if they don't say, everyone he goes with is white, and even though he's on a college campus and they tend to be whiter college campuses as opposed to the surrounding community, he seems to be intentionally choosing a certain kind of man to be with. And I don't know if maybe it reflects on his mental bearing. I don't want to say mental health, but why are you choosing that? Why are you making that choice?
Yeah, that is a question. I think he's a furious, angry man, you know. And so he, but yet he's still drawn to these men. So, but he wants to hurt them, just if you read the description, and the men want to be hurt too.
Right.
But he really is very, very angry Black man. And, I can understand that. I mean, being angry at white people, at this racist society, classist society. But I mean, the way he's taking out his anger, it's also harmful to him, I think, emotionally. And so, maybe he at that point he doesn't really know how to take his anger out, how to use it in a constructive kind of way. And that's something that we all have had to learn. Right. So I mean, I don't know what he's doing now, but I'm saying, those chapters, it seems like he just wants to almost kill them, And then when the guy who, I don't know, is this beyond? I'm not sure. The guy who beats him up?
No, that's not beyond, that's in it.
Okay. So I mean, it's like two-sided. He also wants to be punished too. So I think there is mental issues here. I know Ron doesn't want to, say that, but I think there are, well.
I always look at these stories as also through the lens of accepted behavior. Would you accept this behavior if it was heterosexual, two people of the opposite sex? Would you accept this behavior if Saeed was, because Saeed's young, he's like 20 years old in this memoir, and in a heterosexual relationship, whether he was, whether it was man, woman, woman, man, like, would we accept that kind of violent?
No, I don't. Violence is. I think violence is violence.
I think
if you're a masochist or a sadist, it doesn't matter what gender you are.
Yeah, but I think there's violence in these stories, and we accept it because it's two men.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't accept it. I don't accept it. I don't accept violence. Period. Yeah, I mean, if it was a heterosexual couple and he was raping her, virtually, that's not acceptable. Or if she was beating him up, and doing, nasty things to him, that's not acceptable either.
Yeah, I hear what both of you are saying. Ron, I hear what you're saying when you say that, because, and I think you're right. I think both of you are right, but Ron, I 100% hear what you're saying, because when I was reading that part, I wasn't like, oh my God, this Daniel guy, tell on him, what's his real name? Let's get him Me Too'd out of here. I wasn't thinking that at all. I was just like, oh, well, so he can take care of himself. That's almost, I didn't say that, but now that you're saying that, maybe that is what I was thinking, and that's why I wasn't so shocked by the violence. Or maybe it didn't take me aback like that. The violence, the violence in chapter 15, or maybe it was 16. And that's really interesting. What does anyone else have any thoughts on that? Because I'll tell y'all a quick story. Like, not too long ago, there was like a fight, like a domestic dispute in my building, but it was between like two women who were like both really hefty, and like, were like, clearly had been fighting their whole lives, in school, growing up, you know what I'm saying? They're from the hood. And someone called the cops when the police came, because when the police come to a domestic dispute, apparently somebody has to go to jail. Like they have to separate them, whatever. But in this case, the police could not figure out like who should go to jail. Like they genuinely were like, we don't know. They both look like they can kind of take care of themselves. They're both women. There's no aggressor here. Like that this was a fair fight. They didn't say that verbatim, but they were so confused. So no one ended up going to jail because no one could figure out who should go to jail. If that were a man and a woman, we would have known immediately who
The
was going to
man would
jail,
have had to leave the
right?
house. Yeah.
Right. Right. So that's very interesting. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that idea of kind of how we view the not only the violence but the sex as well? If this was a woman, if Saeed was a woman writing this, we would call her all types of sluts and hoes and promiscuous. But we don't even really talk about as much sex as he has in these chapters. As I do feel we would be talking a lot about them if this was a woman.
I think I'd like to add one thing. This all happened, the fight itself happened on chapter 15. What I'd like to say is I think that there's something a little bit deeper going on here in the mental state that Saeed is in. What I mean by that is that he's trying to, I don't want to say he's trying to transform straight men. However, the men that it seems like the men that he's approaching or has been approached by are straight men or men that are acting straight. Mm-hmm. And therefore they have their own lives. But Saeed on chapter 14, he is actually saying, how many men, or thinking out loud, how many men can I transform? And he does say, I wanted to see it in the eyes of every straight man I mark as mine that season. That was right about how slippery gender, sex, and want really are. So he's trying to see how many straight men he can transform. So now when we get to chapter 15 and this guy approaches him, we're not sure if he's straight or gay, right? But he's having sex with this girl in the bedroom. And then Saeed comes in, approaches them, whatever, and then I guess they leave and whatever, go elsewhere. Okay, it's not until they get into their sex scene that the guy transforms and starts beating him. Saeed even said he wasn't even sure if he was hitting him. And then he realized, wow, he was hitting me. He said specifically, he was
Where are you reading?
Chapter 15.
What page?
Oh, I don't know the page number.
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
But he says he was beating the desire that I brought out of him. He's not gay. The guy, well, I'm sorry. I don't want to say he's not gay. He was presenting himself as he was gay to the outside world, but he probably was in the closet internally gay and he didn't come out yet, right? Like a normal gay person that's out. Saeed was out. Saeed brought that out of him and he was upset. He was so angry that Saeed brought these feelings out of him. And I think sometimes we can kind of relate to that. There are sometimes that you're in either a relationship, it doesn't even have to be an intimate relationship, but a relationship that something happens that other person brings something out of you that you may not like, and it angers you, right? It angers you so much that you want to be hostile. I'm not saying you're going to go beat up people or that was what happened, but this is where he brings up the title. He said he was a man fighting for his life. And at that point, I just really couldn't understand where he was going with this title, but that was it. This man was playing straight. However, Saeed brought these gay feelings out of him, and that's it. He felt guilty. He probably felt ashamed of himself that Saeed brought this out of him. So now he wants to beat him up and show him that I need to suppress these feelings, but you let me let it out. So that's kind of my intake from this scene. And he even said, like, I'm so evil. Like, he felt so guilty, but he just couldn't help himself. I'm not saying that this scene was right at all, but I'm just saying that there's something you have to see. We have to see two sides and what happens, like, to that other person.
But
Thank
wasn't he hanging around, like, after they discovered him with the woman, you know, after he had sex with the woman, and then she left, and then the party was still going on, so he was hanging out with Saeed before going someplace to have sex.
Yeah.
So I'm saying I don't let him off lightly. You know, this man, really, because why would he hang out? I mean, if Saeed is gay, outwardly, so I mean, why would he, you know, just hang around with him all the time and then go off with him? There was something there, you know.
I think he was comfortable. You
But,
know, he had that comfortability, like, wow, this guy's
no,
like,
but he had to know something of that the guy that Saeed was gay, and then if
Oh,
they're going
yeah.
off with each other, then
Oh,
you're going
yeah,
to
for
have
sure.
sex.
But was that the? But was I'm a little fuzzy on the intent. So when they got together, was it their intent to go have sex, or were they just like in the same room, happened to be in the same room together? I can't honestly remember.
They were in the same room together, but it was like the party, and they hung around each other until they went off together. You know,
right?
Like I don't know if hanging around Saeed will lead to you having sex with Saeed.
No. I'm not saying that.
Well,
I'm saying that the guy is not so-called innocent. I hate using that word. But you know, I think that I think that there was something within him, and maybe he didn't want to admit it, but it was there. And if he sees in 2000 whatever, that, I mean, you have to be very naive not to know that. I mean, he was just having sex with a woman, so he's with Saeed, who is gay, and it just seems very naive, which I question, to feel that he could go off, hang around with him all the time. I'm not saying you have to, put him on the side or anything like that, but hang around with him throughout the party and then go off with him, and then it ends up having sex. So I think I think, and he may have felt bad. The guy might have felt bad and evil because there are gay people who feel bad and nasty for having sex, and then there are heterosexual people who don't admit that they are bisexual, who feel bad and evil and all like that. And it's not about that, but it's just that's the way they feel.
I think like the biggest takeaway was actually not the sex at all, or who initiated the sex, or who wanted the sex, who didn't want the sex. I think like the biggest takeaway, honestly, for me, was the idea that both of them were raging, and both of them were fearful, and both of them were hurting, and both of them were struggling to be a real man, whatever that even means. And I think that it's kind of this display of duality, right? Saeed on one end, very timid, and his almost hiding all of his loneliness behind all of these escapades with these escorts or whatever. And then on the other end, you have Daniel, who is outwardly the football playing jock person, who is the last person you would consider, or the last person you would suspect of being gay.
Oh no, that's the worst way. But anyway, go ahead.
but yet he is, and he's not out, and he's almost trapped by it in that sense, to the point where he rages against himself, you know, not against Saeed, you know. It was almost like he was raging against himself in that sense. So it's like both of this like really, you know, strange way of showing two people's hurt like in one experience. Does that make sense? That's a new thought. And the fact that, I don't know, it matters to me that it was on New Year's Day. I don't know why. Or it was on New Year's Eve. That kind of, they both experienced that gross example of masculinity and kind of both of them, I think, let something go in that sense. I think both of them in that experience were traumatized and hurt, you know, and they know it's a memory that they'll always have and they'll always have to remember. And in that sense, like, it almost made them grow up quicker, made them, like, you know, either accept who they are or deal with it in some way, deal with that experience that happened, you know, going into the new year. For some reason, that idea of that experience happening on New Year's Eve is very significant to me too.
I'd like to know what happened to Daniel.
He probably either came out the closet or went along beating people, mad that he's gay and can't come out. I don't know, I just wrote his whole story. But, like, you know, Daniel, and it's funny that it seems like Saeed is interested in what happened to Daniel too, because he says for years he went back to that Facebook page from the night of that party and, you know, tried to find him, and he never could. You know, he only saw himself. I think that's really significant too. The fact that he was only able to, in his memory of that night, you know, even in the tangible memory, the photos, he was only able to see himself. I think that is very significant. He said that for years he went back to try to find pictures of Daniel that night, and he couldn't. He could only see himself. I think he said, like, sweaty, stoned, and I think he used another S, but, like, he could only see himself, you know? And I think that is that idea of survival, you know, and then trying to go back and see what you looked like and what went wrong or where you went wrong, that idea of surviving a fight, I think is kind of maybe where the title came from. Because the way he described it was almost like a dream.
You mean the fight?
Yeah. I mean, a nightmare, but like something that was like had a mystical or metaphysical vibe to it. I mean, have you ever been in a fight? It's usually really quick, and you usually remember. You know what I'm saying? It's like he came up, punched me, I punched him back. You know, it's usually like when people describe a fight, you know, they usually know what happened. They remember. Yeah. But in this case,
I'm sorry, Brandon. What I was gonna say is, I don't think this was just a fight. This was,
yeah, we all know it's not just a fight. It's
I think this was like an emotional, passionate fight between, and I don't want to say lovers because they weren't lovers, right? They just met. So for lack of a better word, I'll just say lovers, but this was very passionate. This was like, I'm gonna let it all out, let it go passionate. So you had said they were trying to find themselves as real men. I don't know if I agree with that. What I think is, I think they were, instead of finding themselves as real men, I think what they were really doing, or Daniel was doing, is finding that hidden man inside of him.
That idea of real men, that's actually, Saeed said that in the book. He said something like, we were both struggling, or he said something like, I didn't even know real men could hurt the way that I hurt.
Okay. Did he say real men or straight men? I don't know.
He said, I didn't know real men hurt the way I'd been hurting.
Okay. Do you think that by that he meant straight men?
I think that no one knows what that term real men means. And I think that's what he meant by that too.
Yeah.
I don't think that term can be defined. I don't think that's a real term. So I think that's what he was trying to say in that sense. Like, look at this football player guy hurting the way I'm hurting. So who's the real man here if we both bleed in the same way? I think
Right.
that's what he was talking about when he was talking about real man.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it got really sad for me. Did it get any sad for anyone else when he was talking about the writing and the poetry and
Yeah.
kind of how he dealt with that incident afterwards? It seems like it wasn't, maybe I wanted something different, or maybe I was expecting some sort of triumph, you know, from it. Like, I wrote my way out of this. I fought my way out with my words, using my poetry as a weapon. But it wasn't that, you know, it was actually, it seemed very sad.
The one thing that I was struck by was within all this turmoil, he is maintaining a relatively normal sort of exterior life. I think by now he's teaching. I'm not sure if he's teaching already, but he has like high school students. He has papers to grade, and you know, so there is this sort of normalcy to his life.
Like painfully normal though, Ron. Like
Yeah.
a painfully normal.
While the other side of his life is like really painfully turbulent.
Right.
You know, even when he's not, and I'm not talking about the actual physical fight, but just his whole idea of how he is finding partners, and the partnerships seem to be based around conquest, and I don't know, like outing people and stuff like that, which feels to me like very dangerous. Like that's a dangerous thing to go into a relationship thinking like, you know, this is not about love. This is about
Conquering.
me outing you, or you pretending to be straight, and I'm gonna spend a week exposing you as a queer person. There's a lot. It feels like a lot of energy goes into that, as opposed to just trying to find love, which takes a lot of energy. Also, I don't want to discount to find, you know, true love, how much energy that takes, but it doesn't even seem like he's infatuated. I think he refers to different people different men who he's infatuated with for like short periods of time, but there's no love. There's no like loving sort of relationships that he's pursuing, you know.
Well, I mean, if you are not, this is why I really wanted to start with that prompt. When was the last time you were brave? And be very honest, because I think he is a prime example of, if you are, what did my grandma used to say? I can't remember the exact phrase. I'm gonna have to call my aunt and see what the exact phrase was, but my grandma has a great line about deception. But it's something like, you ain't fooling nobody. Like it's not that, but it's something like that. Like when you are trying to deceive someone else, it just means that you are trying to cover up a deception that you are hiding in yourself. So him, you know, being this like kind of almost sneaky, like little slimy person trying to like out gay men, really it's just he's covering up. He's being deceptive with himself. You know, so he can't meet nobody real, Ron, because anybody real won't even get close to that, because they can see it's a fraud. But somebody, you know, who maybe is pretending to be straight or whatever,
he can't
they want
put
that.
any,
They want somebody to deceive them a little bit.
but he can't put any energy into finding love with a queer man, a gay man, if he's constantly looking for straight men to kind of like, you know, out.
You guys, is it just me, or I can't figure out if he is when he's in college, if he's out, or is it just assumed he's gay, or does everyone know he's gay? Because I cannot tell.
I don't know. Is that kind of the same thing?
I think when it's like, oh yeah, he's gay. dates my brother or something like that.
Oh,
And people you've never seen them with a woman, but you don't know if they're gay or not. You just don't know. I can't tell if it's which one it is with him. Because that makes a big difference, Ron. Because if he's out, then yeah, you're right. Why can't he?
I think he was out.
Was he?
When he goes to college, he talks about going to a party and some dude offering to give him a blowjob the minute he walks in the door. And
but is that because he knows he's gay, or is just that guy being a guy, a gay guy?
In my life, oh, I understand. But then later on, they do hook up. Like on the trampoline.
Everyone knows he's gay. Because I'm asking you this because I thought everyone knew he was gay, but then do y'all remember, it was really briefly, and I can't even find it now, but it was in maybe chapter 15 or 16, where Saeed is like at the bathroom door at that party where he meets Daniel, and a black girl walks out, and he's like, I had to avoid her like I was avoiding all the gay people there. So then I was like, oh wait, is he not out yet? So he's trying to hide his gayness and his blackness. That's a double whammy. You know?
I'm not exactly sure if he meant it in that context, though. Did he? Was he trying to say that it was almost like?
Was he saying he was trying to hide from the gay people because he, like Ron said, only wanted the straight men in that sense? I thought.
No, I was referring to the girl you was talking.
Yeah, the black girl.
Right, like she came out of the room, she had sex with Daniel, but she said that he was trying to avoid her. But I don't know what context why he was trying to avoid her. I think he was out.
I think he was.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Linda.
No, go ahead. I think he was out, and I think the avoidance that and maybe it's my lens from a different generation, but I think the avoidance he may have been speaking about is that if you're in a setting and there are only one or two Black people there, you don't automatically want to gravitate to the other Black person in the room.
That's what I thought he was.
Right.
And so he was also maybe he thought at that time, he didn't know how many other gay people were there. So he didn't want to automatically rub up against that group either. That's how I took it.
Okay. But he was out at this time. He wasn't.
I thought he was out because remember he plays that game in earlier chapters where never have I ever or whatever. And they're like, well, what haven't you done, Saeed?
Right, right.
It's like even if he didn't know they knew, it's like everybody else could see it. Even though he may have been trying to hide it, but he was out. Nobody thought he was straight. Nobody was worried about their girlfriends anyway.
So honestly, that's the thing, Miss Linda. I couldn't figure out if like he was out, he didn't have to say it because everybody watched him walk out the closet with the shawl on, or if like he was still in the closet pretending like I couldn't tell like which one was it in college. But I mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I think it's interesting that I just was thinking about that is it Daniel, the white guy?
Was he white?
Is it
Was he white? Do we know that?
Well, didn't Saeed say he was going out with white guys? I just was assuming he was white.
Okay.
I'm assuming everyone is white unless Saeed says otherwise.
Okay.
But I think it's interesting that here Daniel had sex with the Black girl, right? And then he goes on to having sex with a Black guy. I mean, I don't know exactly what all that means, but I'm just saying it's very interesting. I mean, if he's a white guy.
I didn't even catch that part, y'all. I thought he was waiting I thought that he watched the Black girl leave the bathroom.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong then. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought the girl came out.
No, actually, I think you're right. I think
I may be wrong.
No, you're right.
Oh,
he had sex with that girl.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Daniel's just having sex with everybody in this book?
He was just having.
But I'm saying that she's Black and that Saeed is Black, and given, I mean, even today, you know, with the racism today, but given 2008 or whatever, where were they where is it? Las Vegas, or where was it? In
Oh, they were in
Arizona?
Phoenix. They were in Phoenix.
Phoenix, Arizona. You know, so I'm
You know,
just
that's
saying,
interesting.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah. Does anyone else?
The forbidden,
What
the
do you think about
forbidden. It's like the forbidden, right?
I mean, I don't know, because like Ron was saying, he was primarily attracted to white men. We think these are all white men. And especially considering the race, you know,
Yeah, I'm
not
not
only the
talking about.
sexual
Yeah,
relationship.
I'm not talking about Saeed. I'm saying about Daniel.
Mm.
You know, I think it's like the forbidden. The
But
forbidden
we don't
is
know
this
Daniel.
black
I don't think
girl.
we know Daniel well enough to even like actually. We don't
No,
know.
I'm
That
just
could have been his
saying.
person
I'm
last
just
time with a
assuming.
black
I don't
person.
know anybody. I really don't know anybody. I don't know Saeed. I don't know
Okay,
anybody
so
else.
yeah,
But I'm just
yeah. So I
saying.
think that
And for
I
my,
think that like the idea behind, you know, the race thing is that it's tricky. This is a tricky pattern that we're seeing with Saeed, but most of all, I think it's even trickier with like the men he's with, because they obviously, you know, want to scream the N word, and I'm mind boggled reading it. So I can only imagine how frustrating and confusing it can be for Saeed, who lived it. And I'm wondering if that same confusion and frustration lies in any of the white men that he was with as well. Or if it was just more like a privilege thing for them. I don't know.
it is a privilege of power. Of course, white people have that. And I mean, you look at the racism in this country, and that's underlying it. So and then so I just was saying, I mean, I don't want to analyze it so much, but I'm saying it was just very interesting that the two people that Daniel had sex with were black.
So I mean, for all we know, those could have been the first and last black people we even had sex with. But like, I think that what's more important is the
Once
idea
you go black.
or maybe once you go white, apparently for Saeed. I don't know. Which one is it? This is
But
very.
see,
This
now
is
what we care
in
so much about, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, if Saeed were straight, would we spend this much time trying to analyze how he was into white women? Because that's the thing.
I agree, Miss Linda. I agree with that.
Yeah, I would.
I don't think this is
I think we would. I think we would, but I think for me, it's not the whiteness; it's the class for me, because these are people that are. It seems like, for at least, that are they're in different classes than Saeed is. That's what the.
Everybody needs to read. Everybody needs to read Isabel Wilkerson's Cast. Really, and she's not the only one or the original one who speaks about this, but it's very illuminating. So,
what did y'all think about the mom? When the mom comes back in the picture. I read ahead. I think that would be on chapter 17, maybe 8. I read a little further ahead. So on chapter 17, let's stay with that. So right before they go to Jersey, when the mom comes back into the picture, what do y'all think about like her role? Because he doesn't leave her at the beginning. He doesn't leave her in Memphis. He goes with her to Atlanta. She's in his story. She's in it, even though it seems like they have a silent, almost, even when they're alone, it seems like they're lonely together. They stay a family, and she stays in his story. What did y'all think about chapter 17? When he meets back up with her?
I think although they're silent, I think despite all, a single parent, single child, only child rather, they have a bond. No matter what, their bond is tight.
Yeah.
It's silent, but it's tight.
Yes.
So I don't want to, I read a little bit ahead, so I don't want to like ruin it, but I will say that as far as like chapter 17 is concerned, they don't have to. I mean, even that he said something about they were sitting at the where they chant, is it the altar that where they chant? And he said, we don't even say anything to each other. Like, we're just silent, but we're chanting together and stuff. I thought that was kind of deep, because not everything needs to be spoken, right? Not silence speaks louder sometimes. I think that's what was going on with them.
Mm.
And it does feel like the more Saeed comes out, the further he is from his mother, and the less likely he is to talk about his life with his mother.
Mm.
I think and his mother's getting ill also.
Right.
You know, she's having heart issues. Was chapter 17 when they take the road trip, when she moves to Texas, I
No,
believe?
that was way earlier. That was probably chapter 13 or
Oh, okay.
Chapter 17 was when she calls him, right after he's kind of talking about his life as a high school teacher and all of that. And then chapter 17 comes and he's talking about how mom had texted him, asking him to come to Memphis for grandma's birthday. Yeah. I think there's something very, especially when you're talking about her getting sick and kind of the further, not the more out he comes, but like the more comfortable he comes with himself, the further he is away from his mom. What do y'all think about that idea of like having to put some distance between home to like figure out who you are?
That must have been tough for him.
Tough,
brave.
He seemed accepting of it. Didn't seem so tough for him. You know, this is his life. This is his life as far as like, you know, going to college and reaping the benefits of getting a college degree. Sort of like set you on you as a child, sort of set you on your independent path. You know, so it almost is like by default. I guess probably most of us here have experienced, you know, that point in our lives when we clearly have to move on. Or maybe you don't clearly have to move on, but you are leading your life in a certain way.
Yeah, and Liliana just wrote something in the chat too. That's the exact point I'm bringing up, because I don't know either. Do you have to distance yourself? Like, is that space, you know, necessary to figure out, you know, who you are outside of your mom? Because I think there's a sweet spot between parents and children. I think that it is like Miss Linda was saying earlier, it's a, you know, tell me, but don't tell me too much. You know, I am still your mom. I think it's kind of that situation, that kind of sweet spot. But it seems like sometimes you see relationships where they are kind of like Saeed and his mom's, where it's on one spectrum where they literally are not talking at all. And then it's, you know, there's that sweet spot in the middle. And then there's the other side of the spectrum where it's like parents are literally trying to control their kids' entire lives, you know? And
or it's like, you know, the kid and the mom are best friends. Are best friends, and they share all their secrets together voluntarily.
Right.
You know, so
yeah,
a lot of dynamics.
I just wanted to add that for Saeed, you know, his relationship with his mom, it's so in a way it's complicating to me, because he doesn't really express everything he is doing and what he's feeling to his mom, because obviously there is like that fine line and that boundary that his mom, you know, has set, that she clearly doesn't want to talk about everything that is going on with him. So him leaving, you know, there was one part, and I don't remember what chapter, that he says, you know, I'm doing everything at school. Like he's, you know, like being very successful or winning, you know, the debate team, You know, the way, you know, he said that everybody knew his name and at school because how successful, you know, his college career was. And so there was one part that he said, like, I wish that, you know, my mother could see this side of a young man that he is, you know? So I figured that for him, it felt like he was trying to prove that to her, that, you know, he obviously doesn't talk about him being gay to her, but even that, like, that together doesn't hinder him from becoming everything that she wants him to become in a way. So it sometimes it feels like he's trying to prove something to his mom, like, and I think it was necessary for him to leave and to see, like, test those waters for himself. I don't know, like, that's sometimes I think, like, his relationship more with his mom, like, you know, really push him to do that.
I mean, that's so interesting you say that, because he also, you're right, he says a lot too. Several times he says, you know, like, everyone is depending on me to be the man of the house. And he says he uses the term real man a lot. And so it is, you're right. There is something like about that idea of what he thinks, or maybe what society has taught him to think of what, like, a man looks like, or a real man looks like, or a perfect son looks like. And I wonder, you know, when the mom comes back, it's almost like every time the mom comes, after he goes to college, it's almost like every time we hear about the mom, it's at a point in Saeed's life where he needs to, like, make a decision. His routine is about to be interrupted. We know when mom comes back, as silent and as mundane as their relationship is, it's almost like we know when mom comes back, his routine is going to be interrupted. And I find that so interesting, you know, that they can, like, not have this, like, big blowout all the time, loud, taking up a lot of space relationship, yet they are still, like, very much connected, and very their silence is like screaming, almost, in a sense.
I think that Saeed didn't want to disappoint his mom.
Yeah.
I think he wanted to be accepted by her, but he knew that just being gay may not be her cup of tea. She was accepting of it because she knew and already, but one interesting thing he said, and I just want to take it back to chapter 13 for a second, was, I did exactly what I thought all people who loved each other did. I changed the subject, I changed myself, I erased myself so I can be her son again.
Yes.
So he does things to just please her. I'm gay, she knows I'm gay, but I don't want to overload her. I'm okay with this way. I left to spread my wings, but you're right, the dynamic does change. His pattern does change when he's around her, but he lost her. That's his mom. So it's okay for him, I think, in this chapter and many others, but that one particular thing that he said, I think that was so deep, because you know what? I'm going to just change myself. I'm going to erase myself just for you. And how deep and honest, and how much love can you do or be to erase yourself just to please that other person? And I think that's, you know, I think also I'm kind of agreeing exactly what Liliana said. That's completely, you know, what it is.
That's deep. Because he's going through all of this stuff, you know, he's going through all of this sexual, racial, being gay, being Black, being broke. Like, he's going through all of this stuff.
But yet has
and
to
still the person, and still the person that you're closest with, you almost have to, because I mean, inevitably all that stuff changes you, right? Even if it's just a little bit, it changes you, you know, even especially the situation with Daniel, So it's almost like he can't show that growth. He
Mhm.
can't show that change. He almost has to keep reverting back to, what did he say, her son or something?
Oh,
Oh, I
you
have
mean
to go back
that
to-
quote?
Yeah.
I wrote it down. He said, I changed myself, I erased myself so I can be her son again.
Yes.
Which is
Y'all,
very
can you
sad.
imagine?
Which is very
What is-
sad that somebody would have to
Yeah.
Very,
deny themselves. You know?
yes,
I agree.
very,
Yeah.
very
I
sad.
mean, but
Unless-
if you're not, I do want to say this though. What do y'all think about this? If you're not going to do that for your mom, then does anybody deserve that? You know, you kind of like
Nobody
culture. Does
deserves
anybody
that.
deserve that?
No.
Nobody does.
You have to be your own self.
Fascinating.
You know. Yeah.
But I do think
Let's
that
not
we.
forget also. I'm sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
just want to put this
Kajiko.
in. Let's not forget
Mhm.
also that she raised him as a single mother.
Right.
And I didn't hear anything about any men, in his life. I think that uncle was there occasionally, but they were together all the time,
Yeah. Yep.
and that matters to a boy. It matters to a girl. It matters, it shapes you.
Mm.
I think there were a lot of issues within the whole family because when they went back for the grandmother's, whatever they went back to celebrate the grandmother for it, he says at the end, even now I can hear it. I can hear the music ringing out. I can see my mother at the head of the table. The only one who could bring us all together, the only one who could turn us into any semblance of harmony. The sweetness was ours that day, and for once, no one at the table denied it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. I think that's yes. Mm. So it's almost like he had to find a way to be with his family and
Those
not
mimosas.
oh, that's right. They were wait, is that in 18 or
And
19?
the grandmother
Yes,
hardly
right,
ever drank, but she drank some of that mimosas.
they were drinking mimosas.
Right.
You're right. You're right. They were drinking mimosas.
Grandma
Grandma
never
drunk.
guard down those mimosas, did it?